Hi everyone, it's Raina. So this video is if you have your natal Black Moon Lilith in the sign of Cancer. You also want to find out what house this Lilith in Cancer is in, because that will give you additional information about what area of life you're kind of in need of nourishment, if you will, because that's kind of what Cancer represents. Cancer represents the fourth house in astrology of home and family. The mother is the archetype of this part of our lives, and it's kind of the symbol of the fourth house. So suffice it to say, people who have Lilith in Cancer can have issues with their mother. And I don't want to just mention the mother, because some people are not raised by their mothers. Of course, in those instances, that alone could be part of what is going on. But talking about the family of origin and what is going on there, and what kind of childhood these people had. The fourth house is also about our past, our childhood. And when we have, when a person has Black Moon Lilith in Cancer, there can be some real problems with their family. And it can be like ancestral karma. I just want to give a shout out to advancedastrology.com. I did look at several sites, and one in particular that I have found very helpful. For whatever reason, I didn't resonate with the information on that site. So I don't just automatically repeat whatever I see online, because I have my own feeling of what this means. And I really didn't. It's funny how sometimes that happens. But anyway, the idea of ancestral karma, they didn't. Advanced astrology didn't put it that way. I think they said something about family trauma. But I thought about that word karma and trauma, and really, the word karma means action. So basically, we could say that they are very similar words, in the sense that if you have a parent who is an alcoholic, and let's say they had an alcoholic parent, and this runs in the family, it's really just repeating those self-destructive patterns, because you're seeing it modeled by the parent. And that is a form of ancestral trauma or karma, because the people keep doing the same things that are yielding disastrous results. So it's not about punishment. And a lot of times, they talk about family curses or something like that. I think it's merely not looking at what these behaviors are and choosing to do things differently. And I think the biggest culprit in that is living life very much automatically and not intentionally. Because once you live life intentionally, you really think about what you're doing before you do it. And there's not that victim mentality where, oh, I have to do this because I'm, this is just my karma, so I have to be like this. I'm trying to think of what people say, not talking about karma, but what they say, like why they have to do what they do. But it boils down to the same thing. The reason I want to emphasize this is because I want people to see that they have the ability to transcend some of these difficult astrological influences. And I was thinking about this yesterday, that I need to emphasize this more and more, because sometimes people, it's not that they like the fact that they have these difficult placements, but it confirms their suspicions, I think, that they are they're doomed or something like that. And I don't want people to think like that. You're not doomed. You just have this particular area in life that you're challenged in. And you know what? If you're up for the challenge, this can be extremely transformative in your life, and you can overcome things. So, with Black Moon Lilith in Cancer, there might have been a lack of being nurtured as a child for whatever reason, and we have to really take that in and of itself. If you feel like you were neglected in some way, is neglect a form of abuse? Yes, but sometimes it is not overtly abusive. If a child is locked in a cage and not fed, or fed very inconsistently, that is an overt form of abuse. And I was just reading about yet another case, a horrendous case like that. But what happens if you have a mother who is mentally ill and actually disassociate? Is it called disassociative? Schizophrenic or something like that, and she's out of it. And so, a lot of the time, and she can barely even feed herself. Or somebody who has an addiction, are they as culpable? Not really, because they're in their own incapacitated state. So we don't just judge it across the board evenly. But even that person who does heinous things, who deliberately tries to inflict cruelty on a child by shutting them down, neglecting them, making them feel like they are an imposition, maybe even directly saying, you're causing me to drink, you're this burden on my life. Those people are suffering. They're not in harmony within themselves. They're not at peace. So, and they're also acting in a way that is an aberration. It's dysfunctional behavior. This is not what a parent should do. So the key is not to take what occurred and use that as proof that you are unlovable, that you're not worth taking care of. And sometimes maybe that causes the child to grow up and not engage in enough self-care, because they just kind of are taking over from the neglectful parent. Security can be a big issue with this placement. You might have had a home life that was just in an uproar in some way, maybe, directly traumatic, and nothing felt safe. So I always associate Cancer with safety because of that home connection. You think about, even if you live in a studio apartment, you walk in the door and you feel like you can shut yourself away from the world, snuggle under a blanket and things like that, and have, your own space, your own thoughts. But when you grow up in an atmosphere where there's a lot of stress, tension, and whatnot, the home can be a very scary place. It can feel very unsafe, threatening on a constant basis. And the mother figure can seem very threatening. Sometimes it will be the opposite, where the mother is overprotective. And in those cases, what happens when you are overprotected is that the mother conveys to you that the world is a dangerous place, and that you are constantly in uh, the threat of being somehow in trouble, in danger. And that for a child, I just know when I was a kid, and probably a lot of you feel the same way, that everything is exaggerated, everything is heightened. So, if an adult tells you, don't go into the city, it's a dangerous place, and you know that you have had plenty of experiences that contradict that, you can go, oh, come on, you're just, overreacting. But a child takes everything in like a psychic sponge. Speaking of which, if you are somebody who's actually a Cancer sun sign, or even the moon sign, if you have water in your sun or moon, this can certainly heighten your emotions, make you more prone to feeling that vulnerability, emotional vulnerability. They mentioned that women here may feel like anti having kids, wanting to be child free. They have they have a thing, you're not childless, you're child free. And as somebody who doesn't have kids, I understand why they created that, because it's just assumed that everybody has kids, and it's not true. And our society is really set up for people who have kids. And sometimes if you come from family trauma, dysfunctional environment, that kind of thing, having children is the last thing you want to do, because the word family is fraught with a lot of negative associations to that word. So you may feel like, I want nothing to do with the concept of family. And if your sun is in Cancer, this can be especially this can be an especial source of conflict, because a part of you may want children more than anything in the world, but you feel like it wouldn't be safe, it's oppressive, what have you. Now, I didn't see anything mentioned here, but of course I'm just kind of skimming through stuff. I would say, because sometimes this can represent itself in the opposite way, that there might be people who have children for the purpose of having those children give them love. That was the first thing I thought of before I even looked online, but I didn't see any information on it. I'm going to just say that I don't really like, that's why I look for stuff online and not just say it myself, because I feel like I should, kind of double check if I'm correct on that. But the reason I say this is because, especially if your sun is in Cancer or maybe Pisces, I would say any of the water signs, that you're trying to get your emotional needs met through having children, or to relive a childhood that felt like if you feel like you got cheated out of a childhood and that kind of created resentment within yourself, I I think that you might try to recreate it by having kids. But there just might be a complete rejection of motherhood. If you're a man, it's funny that they didn't speak about men. They were talking about women having children. But I would say the same thing, obviously, about having a family of your own. So the other thing, too, is I think of certain signs that are more family oriented. So even a sign like Capricorn, which is traditional, all of the feminine signs, all the earth signs and the water signs tend to be very family oriented, because it's kind of that, if you think about earth and water, they're in this physical dimension. And the family, I always say just because you share DNA with someone doesn't mean, you should hang around them. And so that sometimes people think, oh, well, I'm related to them biologically, so I have this connection to them. And it's like, no. If you think like that, you're going to be in big trouble if you have a very dysfunctional family that rubs off on you in a bad way. So you might be one of those people where it's like a love-hate relationship, but you can't break away from it and it poisons your life. You have to determine whether or not your family is really like a good fit for you. And maybe there are some members that you can feel that sense of healing. If you went through something with your mother and you have siblings who experience the same thing, that can be very comforting. But sometimes when you're dealing with these types of people, if the mother or whoever was a narcissist and they played favorites, they may have actually destroyed that relationship between you and your sibling. So definitely look at the concept of family and see, what it means to you, because you may have an unrealistic expectation of it in one way or the other. Either you think it's going to be like destructive if you were to have your own children, your own family, or you think that your family of origin, even if they're bad, you have to, even if it's a bad relationship, that you have to honor it. And you can make your own, you can create your own family as an adult with loving individuals who are supportive of you, and you can give and receive love and feel safe with those people. You don't have to just feel that, oh, I'm related to these people, so I'm obligated. So that might be like a really big issue for you. And of course, there's always guilt involved. Even if you feel like, yes, I cannot be around these people, you still may feel a lot of guilt about that, and you have to work that out. You may even leave your family at a young age. And that's why I said that sometimes, it, classically or traditionally, women, girls, well, hopefully they're not really girls, but I mean, young women would get pregnant or just get married at a very young age to escape a bad family life. Now, that could certainly be the case, but even having kids or getting pregnant as a teenager, and then, um, yeah, I think in not talking about the escape factor, but maybe even on the unconscious level, looking for somebody to love you, knowing about birth control but not using it because on an unconscious level you're like, yeah, maybe it wouldn't be so bad if I got pregnant. But the bottom line is that many of you need to incorporate the divine feminine in your life, including men. And this is because this was a toxic femininity that might have been expressed. When there's not that kind of supportive environment, when there's not that sense of safety that's cultivated, not just from an actual female, like a mother, but from the family as a whole, that creates a lack of the positive female template that the divine feminine represents. In our culture, they talk about down with the patriarchy and maybe toxic masculinity. But what I have seen is that a lot of younger women have been encouraged to embrace toxic masculinity, the competitive side of life, the invulnerable side of life, and see femininity. And I'm not talking about the superficial thing about whether or not you wear dresses, but that can be symbolic too. That can actually play into it. Or, whether you cut your hair very short in a manly, quote unquote, manly type of hairstyle, or whether you allow yourself to have longer hair. I'm not talking about that, but it can still play into physical appearance and choices in dress and the way that you the choices that you make about your appearance. But I'm talking more about the attributes that society promotes nowadays for I would say girls in their teens and young women in their 20s, even into their 30s, when they're establishing careers, or whether or not they should establish careers, whether they should actually raise their children themselves. Is that regressive for a woman to do that? And so there you have this idea of nurturing new life and debating over that. And to me, that seems very, very imbalanced and unnatural that we're even having these discussions or debates. So, and then they, what they do is they try to pivot it into this, female empowerment thing. And the empowerment comes from having that balance between the divine feminine and divine masculine, not one over the other and repressing one side of things. And I think that the feminine, the divine feminine is discouraged. And even the toxic femininity is encouraged. Like the in the tarot would be like the Empress in reverse, and what it represents. The negative trap that comes from the dark side of the feminine. So, okay, is there anything else I wanted to cover? You might have trouble with fertility as a woman, or maybe if you're a man, have trouble with your ability, with your, on your end about fertility. And, sometimes as people might know that when you get pregnant, if a woman has trouble getting pregnant and then she adopts, sometimes she will then have her own child. Can anybody explain that on a 3D level, why that happens, and the so-called scientific reason for that, when the doctors might have checked her out and said, you're incapable of having children, and then she does have them? And it's energetic, and it's letting go of resistance. That woman might have had trauma in her background, but she dearly wanted a child, and when she had one, she realized that she did not have to repeat those patterns, and so she didn't have to fear that she was going to be abusive like how she experienced. So this is what I'm trying to say, is that we can break patterns. We can break patterns. I don't care what your astrology is. That's a template, or you could say it's a cosmic blueprint, but it's like a coloring book. It's an outline. You get to fill it in. You have free will. Knowledge is power. Okay, that's what I have for you. I hope that this resonated. If you would like a private reading, the link is below. Take care. Bye.